Well, welcome back, everybody, to Oscar's Cafe Corner. The time is about 6:24 in the evening. Today's date, it is March what? March 7th, 2026. Welcome back, and good news, everybody. If you're back to this channel listening to this great and wonderful episode, I did want to say a couple things and a few updates regarding the channel. So, number one, we are officially at 27,000 subscribers and growing. It's incredibly humbling and amazing. That's the number one news that I definitely wanted to get out there and say thank you, and my deepest and most warmest thank yous to you listeners and the people that are clicking subscribe, because I know it takes and it requires a few more steps. I appreciate a lot of love and a lot of the feedback on a lot of the episodes, including some shenanigans and things like that. When you embark into these journeys and these channels and wanted to do these things where you ultimately make yourself so vulnerable for folks, it can go sideways pretty quickly. It can get very disheartening. It can get very discouraging, because sometimes you do these things and you have no idea who you're talking to. It could be somebody that's just opening up their reels and not even paying attention to the content that you're saying. Some people might only listen to the profanity and not necessarily listen to the context or the content that you're putting out there, or even enjoy the episode themselves. And that's okay too. You know what I mean? That's the whole point of freedom of speech and being able to just be unique, right? So when you go on YouTube and you upload all these episodes, it's always a hit or miss, because you're not going to know what you're going to get. But when I embarked on this journey about less than a year ago, I didn't think I was going to get to this point where you have a lot of people sending me emails as well, asking me about, hey man, how's it going? I haven't seen you ever posted anything, and what's going on with the channel, right? So I think I mentioned on it in the last episode that I wanted to kind of recreate the channel a little bit, because again, we're constantly evolving to making sure that we find our sweet spot for the product, and it'll never be perfect, but the whole point of this is to make sure that we have that journey to get there, at least so it's much better, I guess you can say, accepted by you guys and heard and listened to for more than 15-20 minutes. Actually enjoy the entire episode, because there's a lot of little layers to these episodes that I definitely want to speak on, right? And again, I do emphasize that a lot, that this basically is an unscripted episode. It's an unscripted podcast where we basically can talk about anything, right? And until we do a live where I'm actually going to be able to take suggestions from the comments, this is basically what we got right now. But at 27,000 subscribers, you kind of pivot a little bit, and you understand that there's people listening, and you are hitting on some things with some folks. I'm noticing that the shorts are also getting a lot of success. A lot of people are asking me like, hey dude, did that story really did happen with you in the bathroom? Yes, it did. And actually I have another one that I'll share with you guys later on today, in this episode in particular, because I guess a lot of you want to hear more of the shenanigans and the stories. Well, this is another Vegas one. This is another Vegas classic. But before I dive into that story, I did want to share a few things. So if you guys notice, I'm a little bit sunburned. My eyes, fortunately, don't look too bad, I guess. The clear eyes definitely helped a bit. But we had a soccer game early this morning, and my daughter played. She played great. Her team is finally becoming cohesive. So they performed. They beat the team that they have not beaten in 4 tries, 6-1. So it was pretty one-sided. I think they probably would have scored more. But again, the team is finally coming into their own, and it's pretty awesome to see. Great to see my daughter obviously stand out on her end. She's a center back, and her being vocal back there, super loud. And I'm starting to notice that also there's a lot of team members that she's with in the background that are starting to resonate to that vibe, right? Those are leadership qualities that you only hope to instill in your kids. But that's just one of my kids. And then I went and did a side job as well under the scalding hot sun, and I am utterly tired. I am burnt. The fact that I'm actually banging through this episode right about now, hopefully I stay with this energy all the way through, because I am on fumes. And then the other part is my nephew Carlos. He plays in his university, and they went to go see his baseball game. My wife did, because I couldn't make it, unfortunately. because I had to work. I got to pay bills. I got to do other stuff. I got to save up for a quinceañera for next year. So I got to make certain sacrifices. And if it means me, unfortunately, not seeing my nephew, whom I love and care for, Carlos, then it is what it is. But my wife fortunately took a whole bunch of pictures, so it was great. So if you have nephews or nieces or cousins or even your kids that are doing college sports, hey, phenomenal. Support them as much as possible because it goes by so quick, it's gone in the blink of an eye. But something interesting happened earlier this week, and it was brought up by somebody whom I care about and love and respect, and somebody who I respect. That's the best way I can explain it. And it kind of ties into a little bit about, parenting, right? And this podcast originated basically from a dad's perspective into what parenting should be and can be, right? And we want to make sure that we are able as parents to provide for our kids and show the best examples possible of what to do and what not to do. And sometimes I'm not sure if that's translated well. I think sometimes our kids, depending on the connection that we have with those kids, they might either accept it or they might deviate, and in some cases repeat the same cycle, which is unfortunate because that's not what you want, right? You want your kids to adopt the positive things that you're trying to instill in them and run with it, but not necessarily where you're going to become the crutch and it's going to prevent them from actually becoming a much better version of themselves like they should be. And I bring this up because for you as an adult, and I'm talking to you as a parent, and I understand this situation happens to everybody, right? And you just never know. Life just throws you a whole bunch of surprises where you just don't know. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. You cannot predict tomorrow as much as you try, but all you can do is make the right decisions and make the right choices to get you in good situations and good spots. Well, sometimes that doesn't happen and we make mistakes, right? Sometimes we start our own families at a much earlier stage in life, and it makes us and forces our hand to pivot and change and alter our own goals and ambitions. And sometimes we just have to sacrifice some of them and give up. At least our dreams anyways. But again, as far as being driven and continue to be an inspiring adult and an individual for that child is a whole different story. Well, somebody that I care about told me this story, and it's pretty tragic because that's the one part I don't understand. Like, if you see if you as a parent and you are trying to raise your kids one way and not to follow in your path, I can only imagine how tragic and how hurtful it might be for you to see one of your kids adopting your bad habits and making them themselves. And sometimes that kind of, it's disheartening when you see it, but how do you prevent it? And this is my message to the kids is like, this is where you kind of have to self-reflect, right? You, as teenagers, when you're going through that stage, you look at your parent and you're either going to want to emulate and want to replicate what they've done, or you want to go off the beaten path and make your own way. And that's completely fine. But the whole point is that for you not to make the same mistake that they did and avoid them altogether and as much as possible, right? To the best of your ability. But if you find yourself making the same repetitive mistake that you yourself were complaining about your parent, then that makes you a hypocrite. That's a hypocritical act. And that's something that you have to look from within and look in the mirror. And instead of blaming that individual, that adult, that parent, I think you need to self-reflect and maybe self-evaluate yourself whether you really should be mad at that person, or maybe you should be internalizing that and be mad at yourself for putting yourself in that position. For example, if you're going to be having a child at a young age, which happens, right? Mistakes happen. But mistakes and blessings as well, because the kids are not mistakes in total. They're just blessings. They're unscheduled surprises, I guess you could say. But they are blessings nonetheless, and you make it work. And that's completely respectful. But when you make one of these decisions, that you are in a relationship with someone that you're trying to establish a home with, and you make decisions where you go to a different relationship to look for physical, when you follow your physical attraction to that individual or person, and that results in somebody becoming pregnant while you're in a relationship with somebody else trying to start your home and foundation, you're starting off bad already. Then, let alone once that happens, you try to fix and salvage that relationship because obviously the other one didn't work out. So you're going to try to make it work here. Mind you, you've already made the mistake already. Like, you're here now. But then you make another mistake because you feel like you just want to double down and you get hooked up with somebody else, and then you have another situation. Same result within the span of a year. I mean, at some point, me as a dad, if I saw any of my kids do that, I would be very disappointed and very upset. That's the first initial sense of emotion, because you would think as a parent that, shit, I made these mistakes. I don't want my children to make the same mistakes. And I see them making the same mistakes that I made. Then it's a punch in the gut for you as a parent, because it's like, what could I have done different? And in fact, there is nothing you could have done different, because there's other steps. And as a parent, this is basically me talking to the parents themselves that run into these situations. We are not to blame for this. Yes, we maybe we could have been better as far as like guiding and advising those individuals to make better decisions. But at the end of the day, they're all grown adults and they make those decisions themselves. There's nothing that you can do. You can pray all you want, but at the end of the day, your kids are your kids, and they are individuals, and they will fall on their face knowingly, willingly, and accepting of it. And unfortunately, you as parents, all you can do is just be right there, just like we were when they were kids, and they scuffed their knees and they started crying because they had a boo-boo. They came running to you. That's all we can do, and be supportive. But in this case, for me, it was a little bit alarming, because now we have two women who are carrying two babies at this point. And now this individual that was the result of this physical interaction with both of them, I don't know their thought process. I don't know where their mind is. And sometimes you as a parent, nephew, cousin, niece, I don't even know what the hell you can do. So that's a tough one. But when I heard that, for me, it was surprisingly alarming, because I know the individual, I know the person, I know their history, their background, and where all this might stem from. But at the end of the day, you kind of scratch your head, because you've heard the total opposite in various circumstances and scenarios and party events that you did not want to make those mistakes, but you're making those mistakes. So where's the disconnect? At some point, you have to have accountability for your own actions. And it goes in line even when you do coaching, when you do sports. One of the things that I think a lot of us adults, ourselves and kids also at a young age, fail to do, because maybe we weren't taught enough of it, is accountability. Accountability is one of the biggest, most difficult tasks that I think adults and teenagers can do day to day. And that is something that we as parents need to coach better, because if we are not teaching our children to be accountable for any of their actions, because we are constantly there putting out that fire, we are just creating a crutch, because we're not guaranteed to be here forever. So if we remove ourselves from those situations where they have to figure it out themselves, you'll be surprised. They can actually do it. Painfully as it might be as a parent, because you know your child more than anything. We have to have trust that we instilled enough of our own extension of ourselves to these kids where they're going to make the better decisions. All we can do is hope and pray. That's all you can do. You can't do nothing else. You can't fix it. You can't fix it for them. And the kids will tell you too. They'll figure it out themselves. We can't not be helicopter parents or helicopter coaches by constantly picking up those kids. However, you can be their support and be their personal cheerleader when they have their successes and be a support in some type of way for them, but you're not going to do it for them. But when I heard that news, for me, that's what it was. It was major. It was big. Because this is just going to turn into a lifetime commitment where you are now not only impacting the lives of two young women, but now you're impacting the lives of two young babies that are going to be looking to this individual for responsibility and leadership and guidance. And are they capable of doing that? We don't know yet. And then so for me, I sympathize with their dad because it's kind of like, I know that individual and he is fighting for himself right now not to be involved. And I think that's what's probably for him going to be upsetting him more, because as a man who has had their challenges in their life and it's finally seeing peace and the light at the end of the tunnel and things are looking up, and then this happens. Now you as a parent, you have to pivot a little bit, because now you're going to have to be there for that kid. As pissed off as you are and as you might be, you still are not going to leave your child high and dry. But whether that connection has been made between those two things, we don't know. But I'm hoping and I'm praying that this conversation has already been had between those two individuals, where they're going to be able to iron this out, because it's going to be some awkward ass scenarios coming up this year. So that's one thing that happened. The other thing that happened is also my nephews are currently in the World Baseball Classic in Florida. And unfortunately, poor Nicaragua, good Lord, had plenty of opportunities. We even have Dusty Baker as our head coach, as the manager, and we still couldn't do it. I think we lost to the Dominican Republic by quite a bit. And I think they might have lost to the Netherlands today, which is baffling to me because Netherlands is not known for baseball, but apparently, hey, they are, and they did it. But that's that part. The other thing I wanted to say is, and kind of speak on, is the accountability aspect of it. And then there's also the managing of your child's emotions. And some of us have a lot of really passionate kids in some way, shape, or form. And we oftentimes, as parents, we get upset and we get mad because we realize that these kids are just running amok. And they don't understand the concept of, I need to manage my emotions better. Because one thing that we as parents, we forget as you get older, their world is literally their phone, social media, their room. That's their world. That's the entire existence. So any sort of changes within that world and planet, it's going to be overly amplified. Because as parents, we have to understand that we are paying mortgages, we're paying rent, we're paying insurance, we're paying multitude of things to keep the house afloat. So our priorities are way different than that of a child. So when we think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, for them it is. So we have to oftentimes pause and reflect and be like, shit, I can't really get mad at them because to them it's much a bigger deal. And I've been having these conversations more and more with my teenager about these very things, because she is a very passionate creature and everything is just overly amplified. She's got big goals, big plans, and she's a dreamer. And I want to be able to support that as much as possible. However, I have to guide her the right way, because she's kind of putting the cart before the horse type of thing, where she wants to dream, but she's not really good about telling you how she's going to get there. Like right now, she's very big in dance, right? And if some of you don't know, she had a knee injury this past year that kind of shut her down from competitive dance for the entire year, which has sucked completely, because you're talking about a kid that has done nothing but dance and do competitive stuff since the age of 4 for a decade, to now all of a sudden they have to sit. And when teenagers sit and they don't have nothing else to do, it is frustrating as hell as a parent, because these kids have so much wound up energy within them that it goes bonkers. So you have to navigate that. And then we had this conversation because we've been reviewing about her school and her coming up on high school and what that's going to look like, what her priorities are going to look like. But her bigger picture and the end, basically the end game for her is to eventually go to New York and dance. But I told her this all the time, like, look, you have to get your grades right. You have to get your stuff right before you get to that point. And at first she doesn't receive it well. She doesn't, because I'm the doom and gloom guy. I'm the burst your bubble guy, because sometimes we have to be that way. And I hate doing that. I hate shattering her dream, but I want her to manage her expectations that you cannot be a good player, a good dancer without effort, without training, and without commitment. If you don't have that, you're not going to be there. I don't care how good of a skill set that you can be. You can't just be a good soccer player, show up and expect to be a starter from day one. It's not going to happen. Let alone if you have an injury and you've been gone or sitting for a couple months, you can't be upset if when you come back, somebody else takes your spot. Or in this case, you can't expect to be doing your pirouettes or your turns at the same level that you were doing it before. You're just not. It's not going to happen. If you were expecting that, then there should have been a little bit more effort from you to get there. But I'm noticing now more and more with kids, even some of her friends in her age are getting to that point that everybody wants the end result without putting in the effort of how it got there. And as parents, all we can do is engage with them and guide them. But the point is, we have to engage. We cannot be completely blasé and let them make their own decisions and fall on their face consistently without us having to intervene. We have to do something. And the younger you can start them as far as what the commitment level should be, what the expectations are, with how to manage their emotions is key. Because when the hormones hit, it's going to be crazy. So she finally understood it. She was like, okay, all right, I understand. I'm going to practice more. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And the other thing also too that I'm noticing also with this particular generation is that they are not comfortable doing things on their own unless somebody else is doing it with them. Now, whether it's a confidence thing, I don't know. Every kid is completely different, but that's the feedback, and that's kind of like common norm. And if you are having kids that are that way, we have to find a way to navigate that, because life is not like that. When they go to high school, it's just gonna get progressively worse. And everything that I'm seeing on social media, all the nonsense with the Epstein files, right? With the files, the famous files that have been redacted so much that we don't even know what's actually in them at this point. And then all you hear is rumors about the companies and that were involved in these things. And speaking on that, one of the companies called LifeTouch. LifeTouch was one of those companies, if you guys don't know, it doesn't resonate, was one of the companies that would be the ones that would go take pictures of your kid at school, right? And they had like a massive contract, federal, like national, but there was a lot of rumors about the CEO of the company using the pictures that were not accepted or that were taken for other individuals to select their target. Does that explain without me going too much into it? Because I don't want to get banned for this video just for that, but that's the concept of it. And those were the allegations. So there's a lot of schools that are completely canceling the contract from LifeTouch because they don't want no part of it, which I don't blame them. And I'm glad that my daughter's school is not having it either. But with all that social media stuff, and then the constant competition and feedback and people like just being mean. I mean, damn, like I thought my generation was bad. Or maybe we just didn't have social media, but it could be so darn cutthroat that sometimes you never know what a 10-year-old might also be going into. And this is why I have so much reservations with not teenagers, but kids under the age of 12 to have cell phones. And I speak on this and I've spoken about it in previous episodes. It's hurtful and it's harmful if it's not managed well, because it can get sideways fairly quickly. And kids are smart enough to bypass any sort of protective measures you might have on that phone. We have to be understanding of that. We can't just assume that, oh, I put a this, I put that, I put this, my kid will never do that. There is no guarantee. They could go around it, right? Hold on one second. They could go around it, and they find ways. And then sometimes we're kind of stuck like, how do they figure it out? Well, they can figure it out, bud. Like there is no if or buts. They can figure it out. And then sometimes by the time we figure it out and how to stop it, it's a little bit way too late. But I did want to share one last story. So with my nephews going to Miami, and they're there currently right now as we speak, I'm hearing stories in the group chat of where people are. And it's hilarious as hell because some of the stories I would love to share with all of you, but I can't. Number one, I need their permission to talk about that. And number two, I feel like some of the stuff that you see and that you observe, maybe you should just keep it to yourself, right? But let me tell you guys a Las Vegas story, and because it kind of ties into what transpired in Miami or what's happening right now. So when my family and I, we had gone to Miami multiple times, right? Multiple occasions. And this one particular year, we decided to go, but this is like maybe, I want to say, less than 5 years ago. And it was my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, the kids, my mom and my dad, they were going to meet us in Las Vegas. And the plan was that we wanted to make a road trip out of it, and we wanted to drive all the way to Las Vegas. And we did fairly well. The trip was fun. It was a blast. And nothing happened, nothing eventful. Me and my compadre Pete, we drove the whole way through. And then we get to Las Vegas, right? So then we had rented an Airbnb, and it was a beautiful Airbnb where basically it was multiple Airbnbs, but it was like a 2-bedroom or 2-bedroom condos, basically. We had a kitchen, living room, had all the works, right? And we get there, and then the first day that we get there, we embark, or the first idea was, let's go to Caesar's Palace. So of course, my compadre is like, hey, bro, like, do you got any beers on you? And I said, I do. They just off the freezer. So he said, okay, why don't we just take your backpack? We'll put the beers in the backpack and we'll go. And as we're walking to Caesar's Palace, we're in the casino and we're having a good time. And the girls at that time were like, hey, can we stop by here and let's have a couple shots before we go here, we go there. So we're like, all right, let's go. So we stop, and then me and Pete are basically like, you know what, I'm kind of thirsty, I'm gonna get another beer. But then we're like, why are we gonna pay $7? Let's just drink the beers that we have in the backpack. So we drink the ones that are in the backpack, and my brother-in-law starts laughing because in my backpack, it's just the most random shit. I should have done a better job about cleaning my backpack. So in my backpack, this is why it's mindful. You gotta make sure that whatever the hell you pack in your backpack is cleaned out, right? Old stuff. And he pulled out jumper cables from the backpack with the beer. And I had some like socks in there. And then some gum, and what else was in there? I think it was like some flip-flops, and then like mechanics gloves. It was just a weird bag, dude. Like if you had opened that bag, you'd be like, damn, like what am I looking at, right? So he was laughing, cracking himself up, and then we just went about our day. So again, reminder, make sure you clean your backpack that you're going to take to Las Vegas to make sure you don't have unwanted contents in that bag that are going to just look highly sus, right? But then, so we continued drinking that day. Now, if you guys remember from the previous episode, there was a part where basically we got completely toasted and obliterated, where we had 151 and one too many, and we were just kind of shit-faced. So in this one, and I don't mind sharing these stories because again, these stories are funny as heck because I know there's a lot of people out there listening that can probably relate. So at the end of the evening, mind you, we've been drinking beer all day, right? So then my sister-in-law and my wife are like, "Hey, let's go to the MGM." Now, if you've never gone to the MGM before, it's a pain in the ass from the main entrance where you drop people off because at this point they were still building or making some add-ons for it. And I dropped them off and then I went to look for parking. And I had to go bathroom. I had to go number one. And mind you, I took the wrong turn where it led me to the street and there wasn't any bathrooms nearby. It was just a street. So I'm sprinting, and you guys know Las Vegas. The blocks are long, dude. So I'm like, man, I can't hold it. I have to go number one, right? So I'm wearing some black jeans. So so I said, you know what, dude, forget it. Nobody's gonna notice. So as I'm walking, I relieved myself because I couldn't hold it no more, guys. It was either that or me going in the middle of the street and getting arrested, right? So I just let it go. I let it go, right? I just let it go. Embarrassingly as I could say it, I just let it loose. So as so I'm walking down the street, and mind you, I'm thinking I got some black pants. Nobody's gonna notice. Come on, what the hell? So then I'm walking and I finally find them, right? My whole family, because my phone was like 1% battery. By this time, like I had already done what I did. I finally found the entrance from the outside. I went inside the casino. I looked for them. The freaking bathrooms are nowhere to be found. And at that point, I was where I was and I just had to accept it. So I immediately go to my wife and I'm like, hey, we got to go. And she's like, why? I'm like, because we got to go. And she's like, all right. But she was looking at me kind of weird, like, what the hell happened, right? And then as we're walking, we get into the parking garage, walk into the truck, and I hear my sister-in-law, my comadre, Nora. She is laughing her butt off. And she's a very quiet person in certain settings, but she's pretty loud in others, right? But in this one, she was just laughing. And she's like literally bent over, just laughing her butt off. And I'm walking away. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, damn, can they notice? And then of course, my compa Pete, he's like, bro, did you just pee your pants? and I and I'm like, yo, dude, I'm like, yes, I did. I had no choice. They're like, why, dude? You could have just gone, like, you could have just got in the bushes. I was like, look, man, I was in the main street. I was trying to get to y'all before my phone died. Otherwise, nobody would find anybody and you guys would be looking for me. And then, so the whole time we're laughing because I didn't realize this. My pants were a little bit faded, right? So they weren't black. They weren't like this black. They were a little bit like washed jeans a little bit. So it's kind of like gray tone to it. So what I thought was that it was going to blend in, and that did not happen. It just looked like a massive wet stain that was down my whole entire leg. So, apparently I walked like this all the way through the casino where people could probably see me. I'm surprised nobody like pulled me to the side like security and said, hey, sir, are you okay? But I do recall there was a lot of chuckles from like, there was a lot of chuckles from a lot of people. And I come to realize, I'm like, damn, dude. I'm like, what the fuck are they laughing about? But I come to realize it was me. They were laughing at me for walking around with like freaking pee in the pants. So public service announcement, guys. If you have to go to a restroom after you've had a lot of beers, make sure you find a bathroom first. And if you're going to drop anybody off at a massive entrance and you don't know the logistics of it, find some spot, find a Coke bottle or something so you can relieve yourself properly. But that was that. I mean, There's so many more stories, but that's one I definitely wanted to share because it was kind of like a segue as to what my nephews are going through right now in Miami. And I hear their stories, their shenanigans, like they're all jet lagged. They literally started partying the second they got there. And I keep on teasing them because I keep on texting them like, hey man, it's this time and it's not really the real time. So they're always constantly looking at their phone and trying to validate the times that I'm giving them because they're so out of whack. But I digress, man. I mean, it's just been funny. And I know this episode definitely is the one that's going to be a little bit different. Again, it's 35 minutes in. I'm going to keep them this short. A quick little brief podcast as to what happened over the weekend. Tomorrow we got another game around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So hopefully that game goes well. But my last and final thing before I take off is to always remind yourself that you were a kid at one point. That's my overall message. If you catch anything from this episode, you were a kid at one point. So when you hear your teenagers, nieces, nephews, your kids act a fool or make stupid decisions, you have to understand that you made them too at one point. So it's our job as parents to coach them and mentor and guide them the right way. But it starts by engaging. You can't just hope and assume that the kids are going to figure out on their own because obviously they might need a little bit more extra help than normal. So it's not okay to leave them high and dry. It's okay to interact, but it's okay to tell your kid the harsh realities of life and what's going on, and that there is accountability for your actions. If you make a mistake, accept it, acknowledge it, be accountable for it. In sports, if they are underperforming, tell them that they're underperforming. If they wonder why they're losing playing time, explain it to them why they're losing playing time, because you as a parent have to do your own self-validation that, oh, maybe they're not as good as I thought, or maybe they're not playing as well on that particular day. Or if your daughter is a dancer and she's not dancing well, be the biggest critic on the planet. It doesn't make you an asshole to do it. As a matter of fact, it makes you a better parent because you're not going to be sugarcoating it. Because guess what? In real life, nobody sugarcoats a damn thing. It's pretty blunt. And it's sad for me when I see teenagers and I see kids that hear harsh realities told to them and they don't know how to react. They're completely just in shock that somebody will tell them that they suck or that they're underperforming. What do you mean I'm underperforming? Yeah, you're underperforming by a lot. So just engage the right way. And if we're going to be focusing on ourselves and doing health stuff, doing all this stuff, we cannot ignore the main thing, and that is our children. If you want to be a gym rat, that's fine. But you have to also manage and balance the fact that you're also a parent. You're a parent first. You are raising future little tiny human beings. And the last thing you want is take your hands off the wheel in raising this kid, because I guarantee somebody else will step into that driver's seat and they will guide your child into wrong decisions, into stupid ass decisions that's going to cost them their careers, livelihood, or worse. But it starts with engaging. Remember that. So with that being said, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate everybody. The Raiders, they lost Max Crosby. That's coming up on the next episode because the Raider fans. Yeah, you lost Max Crosby. So now you're going to get Fernando Mendoza and what else? Damn, this episode really took a fucking turn, didn't it? Anyways, have a great night, good evening, God bless, self-love, and good night.